Hey, we're talking about Star Trek Discovery, Season 4, Episode 12, Species 10C. We are going to give our spoiler-free reviews of the episode, and then we are going to get into a spoiler breakdown of the episode, starting now. Welcome to the Nerd Social. I'm Nathan.
And I'm Chandra.
So, the spoiler-free log line of this episode is, as the DMA approaches Earth in Navarre, Captain Burnham and the crew of the U.S.S. Discovery attempt to make first contact with the powerful species responsible before it's too late. This is written by Kyle Jarrow and directed by Olatunde Osunsanmi. Chandra, what did you think of this episode?
Yeah, I enjoyed this episode. We see a little bit, or a lot more, of the 10C. Obviously, they finally meet them. And I think from the last episode, we saw them starting to figure out a way to communicate with the 10C more, which in a very interesting way, I think, in a sense. And we sort of see them expand on that and get closer. And I think one of the things I felt with this episode is really how large and I think expansive the writers have made Species 10C look and feel and seem. Like you really realize how small and insignificant, right, the crew of Discovery is, and they're trying to sort of figure that out and figure out how to communicate with a truly or extremely advanced species. And you see a little bit more from the crew as everybody sort of comes together to figure this thing out. And the book and Tarka saga continues with the hostage Jett. And we sort of, and I think as we predicted last week, like there's more tension there's growing tension, and seeing that play out in some interesting ways. So it was for me, it was a very, I think, like tense episode, like truly just like engaging and seeing what would happen next.
Yeah, I like the episode too. I mean, with like few exceptions, it was a pretty good episode. It's probably one of the best of the season, if not one of the better episodes of all of Discovery. Because it had like some classic Star Trek trying to figure out how to communicate, how to connect, which is a theme that runs through like all of Star Trek from TOS through the movies, all TNG era. So I love that stuff because I mean I love Star Trek. So that was cool. Like I said, I have small quibbles with the episode that I can get into later on, and when we do the spoiler breakdown. But mainly my concern at this point in the season, because this is the penultimate episode, is that the story, the season long arc isn't being served by the last couple episodes. I think the season finale last year was a little rushed. Everything was kind of crammed into the last episode, and I'm concerned that that's going to be the case this year as well. Because while things happen that are really cool for like a standalone episode, that's why, like I said, this is probably one of the best episodes of the season. It doesn't necessarily serve the season arc as well. Because I think a lot of the action and a lot of the tying up of knots are going to try to be crammed into 1 hour. So that's my only concern. But as a standalone episode, I think this is one of the better episodes of Star Trek. So yeah. All right. So if there is no other, unless you have other thoughts about the episode that is spoiler free, I think we can get into the spoiler talk of the episode. So if you haven't seen the episode, you should probably check out now and check back later because we're going to get into spoiler talk. At this point, I should probably say also like and subscribe if you're enjoying the conversation. And also, liking helps you get back to the conversation when you actually have seen the episode. So, without further ado, spoilers ahead. Alright, so where do you want to start? I guess we can. This is kind of one of those episodes where I guess chronological order is fine. So we.
Yeah, because a lot happens.
Yeah, a lot happens in this episode. Yeah, I think the beginning of this episode they come to the barrier, and all of them are like in awe of the fact of how big it is.
Yeah.
I think that they're kind of using Earth as a reference. It's as big as from the sun to Mars or something like that. The barrier, or am I getting the scale wrong there?
Or did they say Jupiter?
I'm not sure, but
I don't know. It was very long.
I have in my notes 250,000 kilometers distance. So they do standard hailing. That doesn't really work, and then they decide to deploy some of the dots to put the particles on the that are like bonded for like peace, I think, onto
they spray the hydrocarbon that sort of or brings a feeling of peacefulness onto the, because their thinking is that would at least signal that they mean no harm.
The intention is,
they're not coming to destroy.
Right.
Because after to that point, they Tensi just did not respond at all. And I guess when you think about the size of it, they must look like a fly.
Yeah.
Right. Just nothing of consequence.
A fly knocking on the windshield, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But this sort of, once they spray this hydrocarbon for peaceful or peace on, that's when you start to see movement in the barrier.
Yeah.
And and it absorbs them, right? Like they're powerless.
Well,
and I think that's the first.
First, it absorbs the dots, which is, they keep giving the dots like screaming. The makers of the show keep making the dots scream in horror. That's not. I feel like they did it earlier in the season as well, when the dot was going into the DMA or something like that, or it was going into something. I think it was the DMA. Remember, it could.
That barrier, that I guess when they were first trying to get close and they entered that space where they couldn't.
Right.
Yeah.
So it has the same screaming. It had the same screaming sound as that episode. So I think they're.
I was truly concerned because they sent out so many dots. Yeah. I was like, oh my god, what's gonna happen to them? And then they get all.
Yeah, we still don't know what happened to them because because they got engulfed the same way that Discovery got engulfed, but we never heard it back about.
I think they're fine. Okay. They're okay, right? Because Discovery is okay, right?
For the time.
Because I was so relieved. I was like, but yeah, and you see them sort of get enveloped, and they're okay.
Yeah.
And I think
so. They're
they're all surprised, right? That they're okay.
It's definitely technology or in a representation of technology that different than anything that we've seen before. Even the species that we usually encounter on Star Trek shows are somewhat close to our comprehension of what technology would look like, but yeah, they get absorbed into this membrane that they can't really. That's kind of like an isolation pod for them. And as you said, the species Tensi, and I think we got this in the last episode. They're just so physically large. Even the remains of their civilization, they seem like very large, like whale-like creatures. And we get sort of a hint of what they look like later on in the episode, but not really, because only Saru can see them with his enhanced vision, and like Zora brings up like an image of it, but it's like ghostly, and yeah.
And you sort of see the image that Dr. Hari, or I guess it's a scan of their brain,
right.
He's like, we're probably not going to be able to communicate with them,
Yeah.
or the universal translator is not going to work because their
It's
biology is so
so
different.
alien. Yeah, so alien. Right. Um. So I think at this point, this is uh the the membrane opens up around the the lo, lo,
Around this stuff.
the dock the I forget the name. I'm blank.
Oh, the
The
shuttle
shuttle
bay.
bay, shuttle bay,
Yeah, because
shuttle bay.
they
Yeah. So the shuttle bay. I don't know. At this point, do we jump over to Tarka and Book? I forget the chronology of this, because it's not just Tarka and Book. It's actually Tarka, Book, and Reno, and
and
yeah.
Reno.
In addition of Reno, I guess served a couple functions in this episode. I mean, she was definitely funny in parts, but she served the as a catalyst to like reach out to Book, and I mean, lots of people have tried to reach out to Book in this season, but I think she's the first one who actually got through to him in a particular way by sharing a little bit more about her background. I thought those scenes were actually written pretty well. You also
Yeah, I really enjoyed her in those scenes, and also because you see, I mean, I think like I said last week, she catches on pretty quickly to what Tarka is trying to
mm-hmm,
do, because she's quiet, which is sort of uncharacteristic for her. She's not like, not her usual. I mean, she's a little bit
mm-hmm,
funny, but I you I got the sense that she realized how serious this situation was, and like just really paying attention and trying to figure out. And she catches on. We've been saying this, like Tarka does not care about Earth or Navarre
right,
or like stopping the effects of the DMA. He wants the power source for um his own purpose,
right,
right? And she realizes this because she's watching him, which is what Brooke should have been doing
mm-hmm.
from like 2 or 3 episodes ago. And she realizes, and that's, I guess, what prompts her to really try to get through to him.
I mean, in
And
Book's defense, he's not going to understand the math like she is, but still, like, just generally, putting aside his ability to understand the math that she does from a glance, um, he shouldn't have been as trusting at this point, given his Tarkin's behavior over the last several episodes. Like, he locked him out of his ship a couple episodes ago. I mean, I don't understand why he was able to take him so unawares, and why he was so surprised.
installed security
Yeah,
defenses, right, that he was not aware
right.
of.
And why he thought that he wasn't going to try to take over the ship again. He took over the ship and shot and deployed the isolytic weapon. So I don't know. Books books decision making, and also
He's not
the
thinking
book's decision making throughout the
clearly.
entire season has been suspect, and the whole Book Tarka thing was good when they stole the DMA and they went away. I mean, like, that was like shocking, but
Mhm.
I don't think they've handled their storyline very well. They've had Book act in increasingly, like, not increasingly, just like in an irrational way, outside of what you would assume, even though he's suffered this great loss.
Yeah.
Like, they haven't got given the hint that he's lost his mind, so I'm not sure
Mhm.
why his loss should make him lose common sense, and it seems like he's like lost common sense.
Yeah, that's
So,
I think I would buy it more if I felt like somewhere in between, or if there was dialogue where you got. I mean, he keeps saying we're going to destroy the DMA
mm-hmm.
and it'll be over, but it, to me it doesn't feel urgent enough to justify these decisions that he's making, like these like nonsensical decisions. You know what I mean? Like, I
Yeah.
don't get that fervor really from him. Like, and I think maybe that's what's missing. It's like it would make, I don't, not that it would make more sense, but you would feel it more if if that were better conveyed. right? Because he's, like we get it. He's grieving.
Yeah.
He doesn't want there to be another equation, but I guess I'm just not feeling it from him or from this scenario, and him not sort of pressing Tarka or even just ensuring that Tarka is doing what he says he's doing, right? Like he just is like blindly Tarka's given him multiple reasons to not trust
Yeah.
him. And he I would think like in the way that Tarka is singularly focused on getting to an alternate universe, book to me it would make sense if he were also like as fervent in being sure, like being on top of Tarka or like checking him and being sure like he's not installing like anything extra on his ship or he's just doing what he's doing. But he's like he tells Tarka to do stuff and he assumes he's gonna do it. And I'm like, no, like he's not.
Yeah.
He's doing what he wants to do and you have no
Yeah.
clue.
I think as we said
Yeah.
earlier in the season when we were reviewing earlier episodes, like it's unfathomable the loss that he's suffered. Right, he's lost not just like immediate family, but entire culture. His
Mhm.
he's possibly the last person in his whole civilization, unless there were other people off world. Um, but while there have been instances where it's obvious that he's cracking up because he's seeing things like his father and his nephew, he doesn't seem to be crazy. So I don't understand
Right.
these like lapses in judgment because, as the saying goes, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me, fool me twice, shame on me. So like,
Yeah.
I don't understand. He doesn't seem like a he doesn't. They're writing him dumber than they have written him in the past. And he's not so blinded by. They haven't communicated to me on screen that he's so blinded by grief that it would justify him, like I said, just lacking common sense. So
Yes. Yeah.
yeah. So I mean, we can jump back to we can come back to this when we were talking, but like in the shuttle bay, they they interact with Tensei. This is when they get the scans of their biology, and as you said, Dr. Hirai says that their brain is so different that there's no way that the universal translators are going to actually be useful to them. But they do send over a hydrocarbon and far more complex arrangement than anything that the crew of Discovery has done before, because it's all combined with different emotions, and then they have
Yeah.
flashing lights, and
Yeah.
it takes them a little while to figure out what's going on here, because their first initial reaction is just to kind of parrot them, which kind
Hmm.
of turns off Tensei. They're like, wow, these are ants. Apparently, they're not
Right.
they're not getting it. So they
Right.
go away, and then we have this scene with a bunch of the bridge crew. Again, this is another kind of crammed in there scene where the bridge crew like says things about their past, uh, in the middle of like some action, which they've been doing all season long. I don't know. I feel like the writers.
But I feel like that's toxic, right? Because they like it's those moments where they would, Picard would call his crew to the ready room and they'd each, or even on the brew, like the bridge, sorry, they would, spout off ideas and there would be this like
Yes, they
ongoing decision making.
Yes, I think that that's the case. Like it's kind of like a ready room moment, right? But not in the ready room. It's it's in the shuttle bay. I appreciate that. I appreciate what they're trying to do, but I feel like the writers of Discovery are at tension with the fan base, who, and I'm one of these people have been saying for the last couple seasons that I want to hear or understand more for the bridge about the bridge crew, because that's what we've been accustomed to for 500 and something hours of TNG era Trek, plus another several hundred hours of TOS. Like we get more from the bridge crew, uh, but they also want to serve this season long arc. So I feel like they need to either do one or the other, because the things that they're jamming in there doesn't really make sense. Because even when we have the ready room situations in TNG, they typically don't go off and like randomly mention something from like their academy days or whatever, or their father or their mother or their time like windsurfing or whatever. It's like where they place these things in the middle of the action just seems weird. Like and I don't mind backstory because we got backstory from Jett Reno, which I thought served the plot very well. That was a beautiful moment when it actually was in context of what was happening with Book and trying to get through to him. That wasn't my problem. And honestly, this powwow in the shuttle bay is less egregious than most of the other stuff in the scene. I feel like the worst example of this was like a couple episodes ago when they tried to board Book's ship and like Bryce and Reese started going at each other about it.
Which is pretty flat.
But yeah, but I appreciated having a ready room moment. I appreciated that they were helpful. I appreciated that they were trying to think through the problem like a crew. It shows a couple things here that she trusts her crew, which you don't get to see a lot. She served with these people, and we haven't seen on screen a lot of interaction with them on a personal or professional level. Apart from the fact that they're carrying out her orders, but you get a sense from this episode that she trusts them. That's why she brought them in to help her and Saru and the other dignitaries think through the problem. So I appreciated the scene for that reason. So I think after the scene realized that the flashes of light, I think at a certain wavelength is kind of like a code to how to interpret the hydrocarbons, or did I misunderstand that? Did you?
It was the order. It was the order of the flashes, because what they did was they had Zora repeat, because they sent the flash that the first two flashes of light were the same, and they had Zora mimic it, right? But then what they did was overlay the light sequence with the molecule that they sent over, and that gave them the information on how to read the order of that the sequence, the molecule should be read.
Right, but
so it was like over. Yeah.
But I think there was like another level of complexity on top of that, in that it wasn't just the sequence of the lights, but also like the lights were different like frequencies and different wavelengths, so they actually which gave it some dimensionality, which the molecule had dimensionality, so they could actually figure out the sequence. But I watched this like very early this morning, or watched Picard more recently, so I might be misremembering.
That I didn't get. It was like the sequence. I mean, the light flashed at different frequencies, but yeah, it was like the order of, because when they overlay it, right, the molecule, it doesn't just like follow like the straight line or whatever.
Right.
So, but it allows them to decipher like how to communicate,
right.
Like, because they figure out that they're using
just math, basically.
It's an equation,
yeah.
Right? It's a mathematical sort of base language,
yeah.
And they respond with an equation of like it was a simple addition equation, and again we should like back up a little bit, because you mentioned the dignitaries, right?
Yeah.
And General Ndoye of Earth. You know, we saw in the last episode where she agrees to help Book and Tarka, and we see her sort of wavering in this episode. And I was so hopeful that she would come to her.
Well, that wouldn't add any action to the last episode if she had second thoughts.
I guess not. But I feel like it still could have. But I mean, she's still like feeding them information.
I mean, she definitely wavers, because she says, you know, this is betrayal, because you asked what the ask from last week was to just keep a line of communications open, and now the ask is to like sabotage Discovery, so you can push off and get out of the membrane
and potentially cause damage to 10C, right? Because she still hasn't bought into this whole diplomacy thing. But I guess I was hopeful that she was seeing them figure things out, starting to communicate with Tensi, but I think also more importantly, seeing how powerful Tensi is, right? Because they've created, because what they do, like they send across like a smaller bubble,
Mm-hmm.
right, with perfect, like breathable
Mm-hmm.
air. Um, so seeing that they're so advanced, just the idea that that any plan Book and Tarka could come up with would actually succeed, as opposed to pissing them off even
Yeah.
more, right? Was like, because they get to the point where they at least realize they're able to communicate that they are, um, or maybe she wasn't there for that part. Or maybe I've gone a little too far, but
She
yeah, but I feel like she wants something to happen, and she started making the same mistake that Book is making of, I guess, not realizing how powerless you are. Maybe, I don't know.
yes. I guess that's and I think that they allude to that later on in the episode when I think Burnham says that they're holding all the cards, right? They're setting the terms of this communication because like it's very much like they are trying to, out of just curiosity, communicate with ants. like oh
Yeah,
like
yeah,
Doctor there's no urgency for them. They're just like, this is curious. Let's see where this goes.
right.
So like
Yeah.
Doctor Hirai mentions the Kardashev scale, which is something devised by a doctor, a Soviet doctor, astronomer, and he mentions
Hmm.
that they're at level 2, which is a civilization harnessing the
Yeah.
energy of an entire star system, or so yeah, they what I mean once you get to that level, yeah, and since their brains are so different, they just don't understand us. They don't understand the humans at all. So it's just a exercise in curiosity to them.
Yeah.
So yeah, then the General Ndoye thing is interesting to me, like because she does say
Mhm.
that would be a betrayal, and she is manipulated later on by Tarka because she doesn't have all the information.
Yeah.
She has that she has the pact with Book, and I feel like she has this pact with Book because he gave that impassioned speech that touched
Hmm.
her. That's why she voted in the way that she did. If she knew Tarka was speaking, she would have had more pause. She wouldn't have done what she did.
Yeah.
But
And I think Papa knew that, which is
he
why
sent the
he
text
sent a
text
text
message. Yeah,
message.
exactly.
And she didn't pause to think, oh, he's texting and not calling me.
Yeah,
Like, what is this
yeah.
about?
Um,
So
so yeah, and I mean his point is true. Like it could take hours or it could take weeks for them to actually get through because at this point all they're doing is sending math equations and very very simple math equations. It's very far away from like communicating in context or intent or culture or anything.
yeah,
um
yeah.
uh it was kind of where you have to start. They also mentioned like Medi, which is a sister organization to SETI, and a lot of the messages we've put together and sent into space have to have like mathematical equations because the assumption is that any civilization that's out there would have understood or developed this or some sort of math, even if they are not using our symbols.
This,
You're right. So
yeah, yeah,
so yeah, so she's manipulated a little bit, but she also has like this urgency, right? And she, unlike the president of Navarre, is not emotionally detached, right? So she's like, my planet is going to be destroyed in, I think that at this point it's like 17 hours, right, or something like that.
15,
15.
15, yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't say that the president
She's
Torino
not
is
emotionally
detached because you see
detached, but
her.
she is definitely more in control of her angst and her concern on an outward level. Anyway, I mean, she does
Yeah,
snap at Saru in the briefing, and he's like, and she's like to Burnham, like, what's going on here? So
Right. Yeah.
so I like that. I like that little aside in her giving him a little bit of insight into the Vulcan mindset of like putting on more airs and being even more logical in front of people when you care about them. So that was an interesting little insight. So like, and some good writing there. Uh, I think at this point when they go into the bubble, they further communicate, and I think that they are on a replica of the bridge, right? So they don't know what's going don't know what's going on here. The 10C sends the isolated weapon in with them, but it's not armed, and they are trying to communicate. What is this about? Why did you send this? Because I guess they put together that they are responsible. Like at least they put together that the technology that blew up the DMA or temporarily temporarily disabled it was sent by these same people. Which again, from the perspective of Discovery and the rest of the civilizations in the Milky Way galaxy, sorry, from the perspective of the 10C rather, it might have just been a minor inconvenience and just like a curious thing. Oh, they blew up. It blew up on that side, but I don't know why that happened. Or we don't know why that happened. So they are curious. So they send them an equation for like the shape of the anomaly. And I'm not sure how they communicate curiosity, but they I don't remember how they communicate curiosity, but they do communicate curiosity.
I think it was a molecule.
Oh, the molecule for curiosity.
Right, okay. Yeah, because it's a system, like it's a combination of things, right? Which I think they sort of figured out. But they also recognize that the 10C is trying to. They're not communicating the way the species would with each other. Like it's a very simplified language.
Very simplified language.
There's a lot that's going to be.
It's going to take some time. Yeah, for them to communicate information on both ends. But so I think they send a similar message, and they take some time to figure out how to explain us in their message, and they land on just sending over the atomic numbers for the different elements that make up oxygen, or not oxygen, but like breathable atmosphere. To signify them, and then they send over the. You're right. They sent part of the part of the messages are like half math and half like hydrocarbon. So they send over the hydrocarbon for like terror, right? And they send back a half math, half hydrocarbon, like great sadness. Great sadness, like the greater than, and then sadness. So yeah, they're starting to make some progress, but this is around the time that Tarka takes over the ship in a obviously predictable fashion, to go forward in his own agenda to destroy the DMA because he wants to get home or whatever. Like I'm not sure. I think 2 episodes ago I mentioned this. I'm not sure what the writers of Discovery are trying to do with him, but like that episode did not make me more sympathetic to what he was doing. Like the backstory that he gave before I saw the flashbacks in that episode was sufficient enough for me to understand his motivations, but his motivations aren't sufficient enough to justify what he's doing. So I don't know what I'm not sure if he's supposed to seem like a tragic figure or whatever, but like he just seems like a dick. so
I mean, yeah, I don't think they're trying to make him seem like more sympathetic, right? Because it's like, yes, you've lost somebody, Book has lost his entire planet, and he says like, "Oh, I've only ever had two friends in my life, and it's a Book, and you're one of them." And it's like, yes, that is sad and all, but at this point, you're talking about destroying potentially Discovery.
Mm-hmm.
You might destroy yourself in the
Might
process, I
might
think is the
might
implication.
destroy 10C.
And you're right, and you might destroy 10C. Like, is all of this destruction, and also Earth and Navarre, right?
Right.
Because they will
Not
they
as
will be
quickly as the DMA will kill them, but whatever he's going to do is going to create some sort of biological, some hazardous waste that'll eventually, in like a month or so, destroy those planets as well. So like, yeah, he's got.
right, because he's like, oh, their scientists will figure it out, and he's like, no, like he's a total dick. Like this is not wiping out, at least one species,
Right.
right? Because we don't know if the 10C have like colonized elsewhere, but you're wiping out their home world. You're going to wipe out a couple of other home worlds. None of that justifies you losing a friend.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. So you see him, and he's very like calmly going about it, right?
Yeah,
And they're able
but
to
he's calm.
so enjoy.
He's calmly going about it, but like Reno clocks that he's not stable. I mean,
Oh yeah,
like he said, she sees the equation, sees that he that it's not going to work out, and she also saw the look on his face. Like he knows that it might not work out, even though regardless of what he's telling Book.
yeah.
So yeah, the you're one of my only friends, or like Reno says, that's you're showing it in a very weird way. And
Right.
Book catches on too late, and we find out in the later on in this episode. Well, not later on in this episode. She reveals the Book that she's been trying to communicate the whole time. That's why she was asking for the licorice, because we saw that we saw that earlier on in the episode. I didn't know what she was trying to do, but I guess it was to try to communicate with Discovery. That's how the episode ends, with the message getting through that he's going to maybe destroy 10C and then create a ecological disaster that may destroy Navarre and Earth, and that's
Yeah.
how the episode ends. I'm trying to think if we missed
Because like we sort of didn't talk about it, but throughout this, like they realize Zora starts to feel that something is off, but she can't figure it out,
right.
and that starts off like got this whole cascade of them, of Stamets, Culber, and Adira trying to help Zora figure out what is wrong.
Right.
They realize they think Zora thinks Jett is on Discovery, because she's left her badge behind, but they realize like she's physically not there.
Mm-hmm.
And sort of as they realize this, they also realize that Book's ship is attached, and it's at the point where Doyle has sabotaged Discovery so that the nacelles leak. And I guess we have to wait and see for the fallout of that. But Book and Tarka, Book's ship with Tarka driving it is like now detached from Discovery, and outside of the bubble that species 10C has created for it, because Tarka was able to locate the power source, which is on the other side of the hyperfield.
Right.
So that's where he's at.
Yeah.
And
I don't know. What did you think of the subplot? So like I saw a couple other reviews and also conversation today about the I guess plot C, and I completely forgot about it, but it seemed like put there to explain why people weren't immediately saying where's Jett Reno, the head of engineering. She's kind of important. But yeah, I guess the therapy session with Zora in the middle of the episode was okay, and them doing a little bit of detective work was also okay. But I feel like it was trying to kind of like gloss over the fact that people would have immediately noticed that Jett isn't there. I think Stamets also said he was trying to look for her all day, as well.
he was, yeah. but I feel like if you're like, I think like there's so much going on. It's one of those cases where unless we have a all hands on deck meeting,
Right.
you don't you don't see, you don't notice that somebody isn't there. And obviously, I mean, things are still happening without her, I guess. So
Right.
it wasn't until like a really critical moment. So it didn't seem like completely far-fetched, right? And also it's only a few hours that she's been gone.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, she could have been in a quarters for a certain period of time. She could have been working in other. I mean, she is the head of engineering, right? She could be
Yeah.
anywhere on the ship doing something, right? So like her absence, she wasn't away for, like you said, for like 24 hours or something like that. I think someone would have, but probably not. No,
It might
huh?
I was gonna say it might have been funny if you had seen people throughout the episode trying to communicate with her, like, come in or whatever, and like expressing their frustration at not being able to find
Mm-hmm.
her or something like
Yeah.
that to help, like, sort of fill in that. But yeah, so I mean that aspect of it, like, well, we didn't know you were looking for her until you just said it.
Right.
But yeah.
Yeah. I appreciate the part of that I really I did like is that the absence of things. But this is what I was kind of talking about last week. Like, Zora has all these sensors, and deadening something is definitely going to make her feel weird, and she's not going to know why. So I appreciated that they actually went into that during this episode, because they've already they spent part of this season establishing her sentience and establishing how hyper aware she is of everything that's going on the ship. Like, it's an extension of it. I mean, it is her, basically. So to not show that she would notice them attached to the hull, or at least it seemed weird to her, even, regardless of how smart Tarka is, that like it would seem something out, like something is out of place. It took them a while to figure out what that was, but
Yeah.
I appreciated that part of that subplot, or
Yeah.
the yeah plot C of the show. Yeah. Anything
Yeah.
else?
Because I think it
Sorry.
also, sorry, I was gonna say, I think it also, like, it makes Zora seem, I won't say human, but like she she has things to work through. I think, and with all of the characters throughout Star Trek that have been thinking of, like, Data and Spock to some extent, and Seven of Nine, where they have to work through, like, sort of understanding
And
themselves.
emotions. Yeah.
And I think that's right, and emotions, and that's sort of what we're getting
Yeah.
with Zora, is like, she can feel and see
Right.
everything, right? But she can't necessarily identify or understand what she's feeling.
Yeah,
So
and
yeah.
I think that was actually pretty good writing as well, because we've established already this season that her emotions are a recent emergence. It's not something
Mm-hmm.
while they established that she was an intelligence above the ship's computer last season, her emotions are a recent emergence out of that intelligence. And I can imagine, when, since it is a recent emergence, she doesn't necessarily understand or trust her emotions, or things
Mm-hmm.
like, and she's not used to things like intuition, and thinking that is something that she should rely on, because this is obviously like some intuition, but she's still struggling with what like how to process these emotions, or how to act on these emotions and not overreact to these emotions. So that's interesting to me. So yeah.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think if there's anything else we missed from this episode. We got, I think, Jet Reno. We mentioned Jet Reno. We mentioned the yeah. I think we covered everything. It's just that we didn't
Yeah.
we and this is kind of what I was saying in the spoiler free section. Not a lot happens to conclude a lot of the loose ends in this episode. So they're going to have to cram a lot in the next into the next hour.
Or leave you with a cliffhanger.
Or
I don't know what's what.
yeah, I guess so. But I feel like they tried to tie up everything well, they tried to tie up everything last season. They were always like, I think the first season of Picard also had this issue, right? Like they tied up most of the threads in Picard, but then there are threads that are dangling, like the Romulan spy dude. Like where did he go? Did his sister actually die when she fell? And like similarly, like the Asari kind of dying that quickly in the last episode of the last season is all well and good, but like the Emerald Chain doesn't like completely collapse. And it kind of mentioned the Emerald Chain on the periphery this season, but like they're still an entity. So yeah, that was the plot thread that was kind of dropped or not necessarily emphasized in this season. So I don't know if they're going to be able to tie up everything, or if you like you said, they could just have a cliffhanger. They haven't had cliffhangers though in any of the other seasons. No. They kind of just transition into the next thing at the end of the season, or they have a finality. Like last season, it was kind of like a finality, and the story continues kind of thing. Because I think Saru left the ship, and people were concerned that Saru was going to be off of the show, but that's really the only thing that really happened at the end of the last season. So yeah, they have a lot to do in the last episode. They have to communicate to Tensei the urgency of what's happening on Earth. The urgency of what's happening. They also have to try to get Tensei's trust back, because at this point, this fly that they were curious about is starting to act very aggressive.
This fly gave birth to a smaller fly that is now about to try and screw things up.
So
this fly's puppy just shit on the floor is what happened.
Yeah. So like I could imagine that their amusement and curiosity is going to learn to turn hostile very quickly, because they could reasonably assume that even from the very beginning of the contact, like using the hydrocarbon for peace and everything, was all subterfuge, and their intent.
They even gifted them some boron.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. This was all a ploy.
Yeah. So I don't know how. I think I was saying a couple of weeks ago that maybe Tarka dies and maybe Book dies, but I don't know how they resolve the Tarka thing without him dying. I don't know how they redeem Book in this season. Like, I don't think that's something they can actually resolve in one episode. That's something that they're going to have to do over several episodes. So is he going to show up next season, or is he going to die in the next episode? I don't know.
And take Jett with them, because she's on the ship with them, right? And from her message, she's like, you need to stop us.
Yeah, by any means necessary, right? So yeah, I thought this was a really good use of Jett, Tig Notaro, because I imagine Tig is like touring, and also she has I think she has a show on like Showtime and things like that. So she doesn't show up a lot, because I think similar to the actor who plays Bryce, she's on other things. So they wrote even though they don't get her very often, they made use they made it count in this episode, and also whatever's going to happen in the next episode, I assume, and also the previous episode when they went down to the planet. Her interactions with Adira were really good as well. So yeah, looking forward to the next episode. But like I said, I'm concerned. I'm concerned for the season in general, because this is the penultimate episode. Even though, like I said, I really like the episode. So yeah. All right. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I said fingers crossed that they don't like jam pack the next episode.
Yeah. We'll see. Yeah. Well, that is what we think, but we are interested to hear what you guys think. So please comment down below to join the conversation. Like and subscribe to get more content like this, and we will see you next time. Thanks, guys.